Welcome to Nicstalgia, the pop culture podcast where we have deep conversations about superficial things. I'm your host, Nicole Tremaglio, and each week my guests and I deep dive on the parts of pop culture that made them who they are today. If you like the show, please follow, rate, and review on your platform of choice. Watch us on YouTube and Spotify, and subscribe to our super fun newsletter at nicstalgia.substack.com. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Nicstalgia. I have my friend Adam here with me today, aka BARTYDARTY. He's an electronic music producer and DJ based out of Detroit, and we have so many things in common, including a life, at least the last 20 years, largely lived on the internet, or at least is an integral part, that and music. So we're going to talk about all things early internet till now. How our identity has kind of formed and shifted over that, and just the projects that keep us going and keep us excited about what we do. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be on.
Thank you so much for being here. So something that we're going to start with, because I just find it really important, is you were on MySpace, and not just on MySpace as any regular teenager, but as a 12-year-old. And so first of all, I have to ask you, were you the younger sibling? Because I feel like the order of you and your siblings in terms of what you were able to discover, or what an older or even a younger sibling might have showed you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the youngest sibling. I have one older brother, Derek. I'm trying to think of the age gap. It was about like 3-4 years. So he put me on MySpace, that's for sure. As well as a lot of the music that I would listen to on MySpace. So yeah, that was definitely a big influence as far as like internet activity and like figuring out about different like platforms, whether it was AIM or MySpace, and helped me get some of those things set up while our parents were gone, and all that.
Do you remember any of the songs that you had on your MySpace?
Oh, this is a great question. I mean, probably like I listened to a lot of like Blink-182.
Me too.
Back in the day, so probably like All the Small Things, or they had great music videos too, so I would always watch those on like very early days of YouTube, or trying to even think of like where else you could watch videos on the internet back then. But I don't think they had video on MySpace, did they?
They didn't have video around that time. I remember watching Yahoo had music videos,
Yeah,
and
okay.
so it was like an all purple interface, and I remember that was the first time I saw Michael Jackson's Thriller music video.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, oh my god, how could you not have seen this? And I'm like, because I was not alive in 1984. That's how I've never seen it. And so to be able to be the first generation that could use the internet, because if it's 2003 or 4, Michael Jackson's Thriller is not playing on MTV anymore. You actually had to watch what was live on TV. And so the internet opened up a new door for music in that way, in like that LimeWire, Napster era, right before iTunes. We could discover all these things. And Zanga and MySpace were two major ways that I discovered, but then also downloaded music, because I was not allowed, to have I was not allowed to have LimeWire or Napster programs on the computer. So of course I just downloaded them off the internet, off websites instead.
Yep. I always remember like setting the profile song on MySpace was like the mecca, and so I came to like view it as such a like ritual that and I don't know how long running I was doing it, but I was trying my best to switch up my profile song once every day, which I feel like is something that is like lacking so much on any of like the social platforms now, is like just like hovering or clicking on someone's name, and the first thing that would happen is it would autoplay like whatever profile song they had. Because you can find a lot of good music that way too. Or you just realize how much everyone listens to the same music. Either way, but that was one of the first things that, because they also had MySpace blogs. So I remember writing what had to have been my first blog as like a fifth grader, and just saying like, hey, I set, every day I try and set up a new song on my profile. Like, be sure to like check out my profile, and I'll have like a bunch of new music all the time. Because I think I'm trying to think of like when I got like my first like MP3 player that I would have then listened to like those songs that I had found from MySpace. Maybe like third grade. Maybe third grade I had a CD player, and then like fifth grade, the glory days of MySpace was when I got my MP3 player. And then it was, and then just music all the time from that point onward. And so that's like how directly like correlates now with like my like obsession to like now like make music and DJ. So always like trying to find new music, specifically like house music, like being from the Detroit area. There's like such a rich history with house music. Movement is like the huge music festival that happens every Memorial weekend here, and it's my goal to play Movement next year, but my goal is to headline Movement 4 years from now too. I actually think it's 3 years from now, because now New Year rolling in. So yeah, MySpace is definitely very formative with my obsession with music though.
Yeah, who were influences that you had when you were growing up where you realized, okay, music isn't just like something that everybody listens to? Because I feel like this too. It's like you have a true obsession with music,
Yeah.
and you just like it's a really important part of your life. And when you feel like maybe it was an age, or maybe it was a particular moment, a concert you went to where you were like, wow, this is really affecting me, or like I really, this resonates with me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like something interesting that happened with me and like my like development and interest in music is like was a decision I made probably, I think, seventh grade. I was playing trumpet, so as being a younger sibling, you usually have like a hand-me-down instrument if you want to be a part of band. So my brother played trumpet, ended up playing in college, and like was a part of like marching band at Central Michigan, which is where I ended up going to school too. Yeah, like figuring out like music was like a possibility, or just even like something that I wanted to spend like a good portion of my life like dedicated towards. Uh, yeah, I mean, there was a point in the road. I was playing trumpet because my older brother had a trumpet, and he was no longer using it, and it was the time to be fifth grade. So also in like the same point in time, which like fifth grade was a very formative moment for
Big
me.
year for you.
Yeah, and so yeah, I was playing trumpet for 2 years, and then seventh grade came around, and I just wasn't playing trumpet's kind of difficult too. Like, I mean, you really gotta blow on that thing to hit the high notes too, and like I just like struggled. I didn't practice much. Like maybe it was more of a dedication to games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and like feeling like I'm playing this game, so maybe it'll transfer over to playing like actual instruments. Which turns out at least guitar doesn't. Whereas some may make the argument that it does for Rock Band drums. Because you do kind of have to develop some sort of rhythm when you're playing drums on Rock Band. Um, so definitely like Rock Band and Guitar Hero, and just video games in general. Like a lot of the games I grew up playing had a lot of like electronic music, and like going back and playing some of these games now, I'm like this is like the stuff that I listen to now, and it was like 20 years ago.
I was obsessed with Guitar Hero. My sister
Yes.
had Guitar Hero 3, and we would play all the time, and I was freakishly good. And
What level did you play on? Were you expert?
I don't think I got that far, but maybe like at least whatever the medium level was.
Okay, yeah, medium or
Yeah.
it was like easy,
Yeah.
medium, hard, and then
I would say medium or hard, but
yeah,
Red Hot Chili Peppers,
yeah,
Weezer,
yeah.
I
Oh,
mean, it
yeah,
was just so, so great. And a lot of these songs I did know already because I grew up listening to classic rock. And so,
for sure.
um, yeah, that was very cool. And then, okay, yeah, I'm like, I have to talk about Guitar Hero.
Oh, I can talk about
And,
Hero.
oh, and Rock Band I played once with a group of friends, and they
Nice,
were all, I had a lot of friends growing up who were in, I was in band until I think like 10th grade. I played the clarinet.
nice. Okay.
And so I had friends who were in band, I had friends who were in marching band, and I had friends who were in bands of their own, local
For sure.
bands. And I remember playing Rock Band with a group of friends who were in a band of their own. And so they're like, well, you're the singer because obviously the guitar
Yeah.
player is going to play guitar, the bassist is going to play bass, and the drummer is going to. And I'm like, fine. And at the time, I love singing, but when I was in fifth grade, I we did a fifth grade play, and there were like 800 people at my elementary school alone, and so I had to sing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo as I was Cinderella's
Oh,
fairy godmother. I had to sing for like 10 seconds in front of 800 people, and I don't know why I was so nervous and like traumatized by this, but I was. And so I refused to sing in front of anyone for years until I was in a local theater production of Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I had to
nice.
sing at my audition.
Yeah.
And that was even the first time like my mom had heard me sing. Like no one had ever heard me sing since the fairy godmother incident. Um, so when I was playing Rock Band, I was singing, but like I was singing into
Yeah.
the mic. I'm doing ASMR really quick. I was singing into the mic like this. And
Yeah.
so everyone could see the screen and that I was hitting
And
all
you're
of the
hitting notes.
notes
Yeah.
and then couldn't hear anything coming out of my mouth. And they're like, how are you doing
Yeah.
this if you're not even singing? I'm like, I am singing. I'm singing very quietly. And so that was my Rock Band experience.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
like, yeah, I
singing.
do love singing though, and I need a karaoke night soon.
Oh, for sure. Karaoke is an essential. I'm long overdue for a karaoke night. Uh, I mean, speaking on Rock Band really quick, some people would be, so intense that they would do like, you could do drums and sing at the same, get like the microphone stand or even like play the guitar and sing. That game was great. I mean, just it was a cool way to like, because it's not like traditionally like listening to a song, right? Because you're interacting, even though you're not playing the actual song, like, but it's still something much more than just like sitting down and listening to it. Like it would be really interesting to see kind of like what more like interactive sort of experiences you can have like that that are like more responsive to like the music that you're listening to. And I think that's the really awesome part about DJing is that you can go, you can do some pretty crazy things and especially like combining two songs that would be like unexpected.
I wanted to talk about this EDM explosion of the late 2000s, early 2010s, and how that ties into DJ culture because, we had MCs, electronic music in decades past, and this was just a really interesting time because EDM, I guess that acronym kind of really came to the forefront for the first time too, and I'm just interested to see how it affected you at the time because at the time when like Avicii was really big
Yeah,
and Afrojack and Steve Aoki, like I was in college, and
yeah,
so I
yeah,
think that was like a really cool time for that to be happening
for sure.
because you're like going to bars and clubs and music festivals and things like that. So I want to know whether you were in like middle school or high school, what
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of that was like as you were not out like partying to this party music.
So I'm 27 right now, so like what 2010 was probably 14, 15. Like Zed. Zed was probably one of the first artists that I listened to a lot of. I mean, Clarity. Clarity is such a good song. It just came up on Shuffle this morning. Such a good song like that. that I remember hearing that song in like my to sound nostalgic for a second. Like I remember hearing it on like the party bus, like for going on the way to prom, and just being, and even at that time, like that song was a little bit, it wasn't older at the time, but it wasn't new like that year, and yeah, I mean, it just like I feel like it just like slowly creeped in, and then all of a sudden it just like took over, like the music I was listening to. I think the moment it happened was it definitely wasn't until college, but like the shift from like I would listen to like a lot of like I don't necessarily know if it's like punk or like alternative rock, like kind of like you also mentioned like Weezer. Weezer was definitely another profile song I was setting on. Buddy Holly was definitely one of the tracks I was putting as my profile song on MySpace. But even like their later stuff too, like Pork and Beans, that's another great song.
I
Um,
was obsessed with that song when it came out.
So good. Their music video too for it is pretty iconic. They had a lot of I feel like they had a lot of people from like what was big at the time, like YouTube, like influencers, right before like we even really used that word. Like I'm pretty sure like the person like let's get some shoes. Like I'm pretty sure they were in that music video.
Yeah. Iconic video. I watched Muffins the other day
Nice.
by the Shoes guy. I think Liam Sullivan is his name, one of the original
Yeah.
YouTubers.
So crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think like really when like electronic music kind of like took over, like what I was listening to was probably like the end of my freshman year in college. So I was about like 18, 19, and yeah, I mean, you'd go out and you'd hear it. Another song that like makes me think of like college is like, of course, like the Chainsmokers had a big moment with like Closer. I like and that song was playing all the time. Like I think like 2016, 2017, like just like was such a good song. And then Avicii, of course. Like I remember like the days, the nights, like those two songs, like that, like little EP was so good. There's actually a really wonderful Avicii biography. Like Avicii's like kind of like studying and like learning about Avicii has been like super like fundamental in like some of the choices I've like made with like how I've kind of approached my music production as well as just like kind of like the whole like creative process. And I mean Steve Aoki too, like the whole like I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like I don't know if you've seen that Netflix documentary, but it's like the other one is like there's like a dichotomy of like the Avicii true stories, which like kind of shows him really struggling with like that sort of lifestyle, which it's like kind of like where I think I would be truthfully. And then Steve Aoki is just like I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like let's just keep going. Let's just, but it's more like him driving it, whereas like Avicii is more of like the industry and kind of like the contracts and stuff he got himself put in, and kind of like I know I'm segueing a little bit, but like that's like something that I've like very much considered with like my approach with music, and even like selectively like staying in like the Metro Detroit area, which is like where I've grown up, in Detroit, and you know, kind of nice to like give myself the chance to be more reflective with like the way in which I put out music, and like you know, I'm not trying to do gigs, DJ gigs every night. Like I, you know, really value like the creative process, and like, I mean, I love DJing though too, and like obviously want to go out and do some gigs, and so it's just interesting to think about that. But yeah, it's freshman going into sophomore year of college, so like 8, 9 years ago, and I've just been obsessed with electronic music ever since.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the culture shift in the touring industry, especially because of the pandemic. And you would have these
Sure.
DJs hitting up every single major music festival. They would be touring 300 plus days out of
Yeah.
365 days a year. Even Paris Hilton was making
Yeah.
appearances every single day in every corner of the world. And right, obviously, some personalities are better or worse equipped
Yeah.
for fame, for traveling, for just like the immense physical, mental, emotional toll that it takes on you. But I think that now there are so many different opportunities, and I think that wanting to stay localized and to nurture your community and to focus on your creative process, I think that that can ultimately produce a better output, like when you're not giving so much of yourself away to the whole song and dance behind it.
My first album was called Health Insurance, which is out on like all the platforms and stuff. So if anyone's curious, you can check that out. It's an album of like 12, 13 songs that I made throughout COVID, and like the whole idea of it, like the cover of the album is it's like this cool like I don't know, kind of just like this naturey sort of background, and then there's this like health insurance card, which is like the main focal point of it, and it has like my name, and it says that like the health insurance policy like goes to infinity, and it's just like, I mean, to be honest with you, like I still don't have health insurance, but this is what I've made like my fabricated version of health insurance, which like I've been more healthier than I've ever been in my life because I pay attention to my prescription, which I say is reading, writing, exercising, meditating, manifesting, and creating. So just like kind of using that approach with like, I mean, it's just like kind of like my life philosophy, like with my job or with the music that I'm making and the writing that I'm putting out online, and just like hoping to imbue those sort of like values is really what it is. Because, you know, if you like reading and writing, well, you probably like learning, you know, like that's something that I'm like very passionate about with like my newsletter that I have, which is the freelance graduate student, which like, you know, it was started during COVID. And that's even like, also during COVID is when I put out my first DJ mix, the first ever. So that's how I got the BARTYDARTY name, is like I put out a mix and I was like, well, I guess I should ask you a question is, do you know what a darty is?
No.
So a darty is a day party.
Oh, okay. Now that you say it, yeah, that's clicking. That's clicking. Okay, yeah, now I know, and I have also been to them. I think we used to
Yes.
just call it day drinking, but I think Darty actually sounds much better.
But yeah, it feels better too, and just like, you know, we all, I mean, as we all should, we need to value a good night's rest. So if we're gonna party, we should do it during the daytime.
And you released a single recently, which it's called Sweaty Betty, which it's funny that you say that you enjoy exercise because
Yes.
there is an exercise clothing store called Sweaty
Yeah.
Betty.
Yes. So my one of my close friends from college, so he works for it's Merrill, and so one of their brands is Sweaty Betty, and I honestly had no idea that that was even the case until he told me that, and so yeah, waiting to. I should reach out to them and be like, hey, this is the banger for your next ad campaign. But yeah, like that song, it just goes straight into the beat, and like listening to that song like on the treadmill is ideal. I mean, any sort of like cardio, like that beginning part, like just right off the bat, it just like really gets you. So yeah, that was an exciting one, and that was the first. So the album that I had put out previously was under my actual name, Adam Bartley, but transitioning from putting out music as Adam Bartley to then like going through this rebrand, which happened right around the time in which like FWB Fest happened. I was like, you know what? I'm really gonna go all in on this BARTYDARTY thing. Yeah, so it's been interesting to kind of approach my like creative work as like with a different identity or different like alias. But I guess it's also something I've been doing going way back to AIM, the AIM days, and just having like these different like digital masks to throw on, and then going into the world and like kind of sharing that that's who I am, or you know, or not sharing that. So it's interesting, kind of like how you can approach like the, you know, IRL versus the URL world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you said it goes back to when we had screen names. as like kids basically, and you kind of have to choose how you want to represent yourself online. And it was different in that case because people only knew you in person,
Yeah,
and then maybe they would glean something new about you based on what your screen name is,
for sure.
or or people could say, "Oh yeah, of course she loves." Okay, mine was Dancer Baby, spelled
Yes,
Baybee 4273.
nice.
I have a on Etsy, they make custom stickers where it's the little screen where you sign on AIM, so it has a little guy and then
Yeah,
your
yeah.
custom screen name is in it.
Oh,
So I'm like, obviously we need Dancer Baby 4273
of course.
recognition here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, being a dancer, that was my identity solely for so long. And
Yeah.
then, when you go through different phases and stages of life, things tend to shift. And it's so funny to, you know, think about people who know me from dance, or people who know me from the
Yeah.
fashion industry, or people who know me now from Web3 or from FWB, and people don't know other segments of you, even if at
Yeah,
one point they were like the biggest parts of your life. And
for sure.
so I think it's so interesting to be able to explore all of those different versions of who we are, because at the core,
Yeah,
that doesn't change. You are you,
for
and
sure.
the fact that you get to be mutable to an extent about how you
Yeah,
want to represent yourself, especially now, as back in the day we only had our in-person presence, and now we have completely integrated our online personas with our or at least I like to. Now that I'm saying out loud, that's kind of the antithesis of influencer culture.
for
Influencer
sure.
culture is
Yeah,
about cultivating a separate online persona, which may or may not be congruent with who you are
yeah,
in real life. But anyway, from my perspective, I was more of an anti-influencer myself, where I really wanted to keep it about the community and about connecting with people and about helping people really feel a part of something. And anyway, so yeah, I think about that identity piece a lot and how I
yeah.
can be integrated in that approach.
I'm substitute teaching right now for gym class. It's wonderful. And so I have also they have Bluetooth speakers now in gym class. So I'm always playing. I'm introducing these kids at the ripe age of, I mean, roughly the same time when we were, on like AIM, MySpace. I'm giving them house music, right? And like they're putting my songs in their like TikToks and stuff. So maybe this is the playbook for future DJs and musicians, is to get into substitute teaching and start sharing my music with these kids. And they're like, oh wait, you make music? I'm like, yeah, like I'm not only a teacher. Like, I mean, of course, like, and looking back now too, like when I was in school, I wasn't really like that motivated, and I had my interests, sure, like outside of school, and like uh, it's just kind of cool to like be able to like kind of put myself back in like their shoes too, and just like think of like be more nostalgic and think about like the things that I was really enjoyed as a fifth grader, as like even like as a freshman in college and stuff. Just like, so even like having this conversation, it's like very like congruent, like of like how I've been thinking more and more recently, which I think it's good to be like in touch with like your inner child, and just like making sure that you're doing something that like your younger self would be proud of, and not be like, man, you've changed or whatever, right? Like, but also like embracing that sense of play is like also like accepting responsibility too, which I think is something that I've really been like focusing on, especially like starting off this year, is just trying to be more responsible. Like, and like, what does that mean? Like, well, it's a good question, because like I'm still like figuring out what exactly that means, but like I think just like being more of a leader, like where I can, like not only in my like IRL community, but also like online, trying to like share that message, but also like find people that like align with like that mindset, mentality, and like wanting to just like learn and grow together. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it is really important to decide the kind of person that you want to be and what kind of values you want to stick to. For me, it's expression, it's enthusiasm, it's connection, it's curiosity. And no matter what I'm doing, it has to connect back to at least one of, if not all of those things. I wanted to ask you one last question before we wrap up, and that is, if you were to create your dream DJ music festival and you can pick up to 5 DJs to headline, who would you pick?
I'll start off with Polo and Pan, a French duo. They make this trippy, sort of like funky, kind of like psychedelic, but yet like, I don't know, you want to dance, you want to move. Probably Disclosure. Disclosure is really great. I know we were talking about like formative music, like Latch. I mean, Latch is such a good song.
Latch was life-changing.
That whole album is just magnificent, their first one. I mean, definitely Kygo. Kygo is like one of my favorite artists. I love the way he blends like kind of like this traditional sort of classical piano, like, so at times he'll, you know, just be playing like these house bangers and then all of a sudden just get up on the piano, which like is very like much goals for like a future live show, like as I like think of like how I want to like, you know, potentially build that out in the future. Definitely Kygo, Disclosure, and then Polo and Pan. 2 more. I mean, Odessa, they're not like traditional DJs. They're more of just like electronic music, but they do a lot of like kind of like symphonic sounds with their stuff. And last but not least, MK. MK has done a lot of really excellent mixes throughout the years and like remixes. He's based out of Detroit, or he was born in Detroit. I don't know if he still lives in the area, but he's like in his 50s, and this guy just keeps I don't know how he does it, but he just keeps putting out just steady, just somehow better and better songs. And like one thing I always find relieving is like whenever I look up people's ages, because like, you know, I'm 27, like am I getting too old to be, you know, still like pursuing music and stuff, and just like looking at like the people that have really, you know, made their mark, put their stamp on the world with their music. It's like they've been doing this shit for a really long time. It gets me excited to do music for a really, you know, really fucking long time. And yeah, I'm just like excited to just like keep doing it and to see where I'm at with my music and piano, DJing, producing, like 20 years from now, you know, or 23 years from now when I'm 50, and just like what kind of house bangers am I going to make when I'm 50? Like that's the shit I get really excited for.
Yeah, it's really cool to see, even like now that you say piano too. I was a huge Ben Folds fan.
Oh, nice.
And I've seen him play live a few times. And yeah, he's definitely, or I actually don't know. I'm assuming he's in his 50s now. Yeah. And so to see people who continue doing different things. He worked with several a cappella groups too to release an album, and
for sure,
just like doing creative and interesting things. So
yeah.
Where can the people find you?
So yeah, you can find me on probably the best places, either Twitter or Instagram at lowercase I, all capitals, BARTYDARTY, BARTYDARTY. And then also I have a newsletter called The Freelance Graduate Student. Might be doing a rebrand on that pretty soon, but we'll see. And that's a Substack, and then of course on all like streaming platforms you can find my music.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks a ton for having me on. It was a blast catching up, and looking forward to talking with you some more. And just really appreciate you having me on.
Of course, and thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next time. Bye.
Peace out.
That's a wrap for this week. If you like Nicstalgia, connect with me on social at Nicole Tremaglio. Subscribe to the Nicstalgia newsletter at nicstalgia.substack.com, and follow, rate, and review on your platform of choice. Everything's linked in the show notes, including where to find out more about our guest of the week. Thank you so much for your support, and that was this week's episode of Nicstalgia.